But welcome, everyone. Melanie from Sugarland, Polly from Boston. Hi from Boulder, Rosa. Polly, Boston. I'm from Iowa. I didn't even put where I'm from. Chris, did you put where you're from? Chris,
California.
From California.
Northern California.
And I'm in Boulder at the moment.
Christina from California. Should we go ahead and get started, Signe?
Yeah, I think so. We're 4 minutes over and we'll let people in as they come in. I know it was a little bit tricky because this was a bit new to me and Eventbrite wasn't completely working out for me. So I appreciate everyone who's made it so far. This was an intelligence test. So thanks for joining us. Yeah, so why don't I'll hand it over to you, Teresa, and you can explain.
Hi, everyone. I'm Teresa Shantz. I live in Winterset, Iowa. I am a podcaster and spiritual way shower in making the spiritual part of your life practical through tntspiritworks.com. I met both Signe and Chris through the Book Doulas Incubator Program in 2020. And I'm so honored to be invited here and to be a part of this beautiful celebration. So during our time together tonight, there'll be a short introduction, which is what we're doing now, discussions of the book, and a question and answer portion at the end. So if you have any questions as we go through tonight, please write them in the chat room. And then at the end, we'll go over them and we'll address them, okay? So I'm honored to introduce tonight's guest of honor, Signe Myers Hovem, author of The Space in Between, an empath's field guide. Signe works as a spiritual counselor and teaches workshops and trainings in the art of being an empath and the power of language in many countries around the world. She has created homes on 5 continents over 20 years, raised 4 uniquely sensitive children, and pursued a special education lawsuit appeal to the United States Supreme Court, as well as volunteered in a hospice in Texas and an orphanage in Azerbaijan. And also let me introduce Kristine Carlson's with us tonight, who is a New York Times bestselling author with her late husband, Dr. Richard Carlson, with the Don't Sweat the Small Stuff book series. Partnering with developmental editor Deborah Evans, they co-lead bookdoulas.com, inspiring others to become authors and birth their books. She is a dynamic transformational teacher and retreat leader, and we are so excited you all are here with us this evening.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, I'm going to welcome all of you. And I just want to say, you know, it is quite emotional to see all of you here. And you're coming in from all over the world. There's 1 or 2 Europeans in here, but there's Australians and there's the whole US coming in all over the place. And you all represent to me, you know, friends, family, mentors, writing colleagues, publishing cohorts. So each and every one of you, I am very delighted that you've come to celebrate with me, because most of you will know that this has been a long journey for me. And this is really, truly tonight about celebrating that this has come forth and it's out into hopefully most of your hands. So thank you for that. And Teresa and I, you know, we did meet in the Book Doulas, and she's interviewed me on her podcast as well. And she's so enthusiastic. That is the name of her is Enthusiastically Spiritual. And she's just the right person to be my assistant here tonight, and looking at the chats and seeing what the questions are and kind of keeping me not so distracted with all of that. And I will read the chat afterwards. So whatever personal messages that have been given, I will look at that, and I'll be very grateful to read that. And Chris is, she is an amazing woman. And I would like to actually have a start with something that she would do weekly with us in the book doulas. It was a 2 or 3 month program. And every time we met, she would center us and bring us together into a collective space in what I call her signature meditation called the Golden Pause. And so I would be honored if she would do this for us right now. So I'll hand it over to Kristine.
Thank you, Signe. And first, let me say what an honor it is to be here to celebrate this incredible accomplishment for Signe. Just a beautiful book that she's birthed, and it's wonderful that you've all attended tonight. So go ahead and sit comfortably. If you're seated in a chair, uncross your legs, place your palms open on your lap, close your eyes, and just begin to breathe. Breathing through your nose, allowing your chest and your belly to fully expand, taking in the fullness of your breath. On the exhale, just release, relax, and let go. And breathing in pure golden sunlight to the top of your head, to the tips of your fingers and your toes. On the exhale, just release what doesn't serve you. Breathing in pure golden sunlight to every cell of your being. On the exhale, sink in, relax a little bit deeper. And breathing in pure golden sunlight to the top of your head, to the tips of your fingers and your toes. On the exhale, release, relax, and let go. And breathing in pure golden sunlight through your mind, through your core, through your heart. On the exhale, just let go of anything that doesn't serve you. And this time, as you breathe in pure golden sunlight to the top of your head, to the tips of your fingers and your toes, go ahead and place your hand on your heart, activating your heart, opening your heart, and spend a moment thinking of just one thing you feel grateful for. And as you fill your heart and your mind and your body with pure golden gratitude, on the exhale, release, relax, and let go. And breathing in pure golden gratitude to the top of your head, to the tips of your fingers and your toes. On the exhale, just let go a little bit more. And breathing in pure golden gratitude through your heart, through your mind, through your core. On the exhale, allow that gratitude to wash over you like a cascading waterfall of pure joy. And breathing in pure golden gratitude again, filling your heart, filling your mind, filling your entire being with golden gratitude. Allow it to wash over you again like a cascading waterfall of pure joy. And taking one last deep breath in of pure golden gratitude, filling your entire body with golden gratitude. On the exhale, go ahead and open your eyes.
Thank you, Chris.
Welcome.
I wanted to start tonight by talking about, in a writer's life, in creating a book, there are many times that you think you're done and that you can't possibly have to do anything more with the book, but there's always more. And Chris was one of those people who had to deliver me some kind of tough news when I had her read my manuscript. And I think July through October of last year, with the idea that I already had a contract in place, and I wanted, but I felt I had an intuitive knowingness that it wasn't really ready to be out into the world. And I needed a pair of eyes that had heart in it as well to help me look at this. And so Chris, she came back to me after she read it, and we had it along with Deborah Evans, the editor that she works with. And she, she said that there was some work to be done. And part of that was that for so much of the time I wrote, I was very isolated. I moved 3 different countries in that time. I was writing on my own. I might share a little bit. And it was taking a lot of time for me to language my experiences, to find language that I thought would help people to understand me. And but when I gave it to Chris, and she said, there's a lot of beautiful writing here, but there's some of my own heart was missing from it. She could feel that there was a kind of a distance I had placed between myself and the reader. Getting emotional. And part of that is, I think, as a sensitive person, we're used to putting up boundaries. And so, God, excuse me, I'm going to take a sip of water. So in writing this book, I myself kind of did what I am writing about. I had put a boundary there. And Chris was the one who introduced to me about the author's promise to the reader, and also about having a relationship with the reader. But I'd like to pass it back to Chris, not only so I can drink more water and contain myself, but so that he could explain, through the book doulas, and kind of the heart of a writing project is this promise. So
Yeah, so first of all, I want to just say, that was one of the most difficult conversations I've ever had to have, because Signe is such a beautiful person. And you could tell, like when I read her manuscript, her whole heart was really in this. So everything that we really wanted her to do was to, just go back and make some changes, which she has so elegantly done. And just talking a little bit about my interpretation of her book. Well, first of all, when I read it, I was really excited because I've never really read too much about empaths. And I discovered in her book that I wasn't necessarily an empath, but I was a very highly sensitive person. But then I loved how she said that you're not actually born an empath, that you really choose to be an empath. Isn't that right, Signe?
yeah.
And what I love about Signe's book is that through her own life's journey, she demystifies many of the ideas that are out there about what it means to be an empath. And rather than thinking of being an empath as being gifted or having a superpower, it's really, she talks about how it's really having access to your own sensory perception and intuition, and then using that to become more self-aware and more connected in a deeper way with humanity. And I love that so much because, boy, if there was ever a time that this world needed this, it's right now. And I feel that this book is so timely. And sometimes when our books take years, it's just because the whole world isn't quite ready for them yet. Sometimes a book can be birthed too early, and that person may be a pioneer, but the world isn't ready to receive what they have to say. So one of the things that we teach in our Book Doulas program is how important the author promise is. One of the reasons we do that is because usually first-time authors, and if you're thinking about writing a book, this is something to keep in mind, is that most first-time authors, they think of a book as throwing in the whole kitchen sink, like everything goes into the first book, And then what you have is, I don't have a very intentional book necessarily that a reader can really pick up what is intended. And so the promise of the book is really, what is the author intending for the reader to take away from the book? What key promise, what do you want them to know, and what do you want them to feel once they've read the book? So what did you do, Signe, in your final rewrite to come back to the author promise?
Well, I came back to why I was writing the book. I had to kind of understand that when I was younger and, not fully aware of what empathic meant, I didn't have a lot of resources, or the resources I saw didn't align to what I was experiencing. And so in the truest sense, I shifted the point of view to the reader. One, I had the challenge that this is a hybrid. It's a memoir and a self-help. And Chris and Deborah put me together with an editor out of New York who could help me do a massive rewrite in a 3-month period, knowing that my contract was saying that the book had to be in by the beginning of February. And so I did. I mean, for 3 months, I sat down and I shifted the point of view to what is essential that I would have wanted to know as a young, 20, 30 something year old. So it was very much of that school of thought of writing yourself a letter, like we have these letters of, what would you tell yourself, and, put it away in a time capsule. But I really started to say, what did the younger me need to know? And that really helped open up, and it helped take down the walls a little bit that I had up. And I really also wanted to demystify it, because I think we fear what we don't understand. And mass media will always want to sell fear, or powers and gifts as sexy things. But for me, it was more intimate and authentic. And I always say that, being an empath, you really begin to understand where your imagination begins and where your reality starts. Because one of the things I say that distinguishes it between a highly sensitive person and an empathic, intuitive person is that usually an empathic person is questioning, did I imagine that? What did I just feel? Whereas a highly sensitive person is pretty much grounded in their sensory, in the physical world, bright lights, sounds, allergies. There is a component of the physical world that is kind of testing them. And yes, they can pick up subtleties and body language, but it's still not to the degree where a highly sensitive person would say, did I just imagine that bright light? Or, so I want to say that, the authenticity of honoring your sensory nature really helps you come to yourself and start to do some deep inner work. And I think there's a lot of people, I'm middle-aged, I think there's a lot of sensitive people in the world who have managed their sensitivities by just giving it a label, and let that label just presumably either protect them or manage them. And it has in its own way kind of stopped their own investigation of what is the source of their sensitivities. And so hopefully people who are reading my book will see that my point of view is really to be a guide, and to offer some suggestions. I don't want to override anyone's authority of getting to know themselves. There's some people in this crowd tonight that knows Max Regan, and he has a wonderful line that the definition of terrorism is somebody telling you who you are. And it always gets me a little emotional, because I think sensitive people are told all the time who they are. And we either accept it or we take it in and we discover for ourselves the truth.
Beautiful. So there's a quote that you welcome your reader with. It's know who you are and be such. And in some ways, this crystallizes your author's promise. Can you explain this to us further, please?
Yes, I love this quote by Pindar, know yourself and be such. And I would often, and I still ask myself that, do you know who you are and are you being such? We have this idea of who we are, but can we walk the talk? Can we embody it? And where we can't, there's that disparity, and it niggles at us and it's stress. And so, but know who you are and be such, to me was an expansive kind of motto, because we know it's easy to kind of know who you are physically and in your own role. You're a woman, you're a wife, you're a mother, you're a daughter, but do you know yourself energetically? And I think that was the biggest challenge for me, is because not everyone knows about energy, or it's kind of this kind of abstract concept that you hear in yoga when people talk about chakras or meridians. And yet I really wanted people to understand this energetic aspect of themselves, because they are physical and they are energy. They're one and the same. In my book, I use the example that you can have a coin and its heads and its tail, but it is still made from the same metal. And often we get where we're just looking at, is it heads up or tails up, and thinking of the separation, when if we just changed our perception and realize regardless it's the same. And that's the same with our energy selves and our physical self. They are connected and one impacts the other. So there are some chapters in the book that I really sat on the fence. Do I put this in? Will it scare people off? Will they think it's too new age? Will they think, what is she going on about? And it may challenge people. I understand that, but I really did it as a teaser. I wanted people to start thinking, you're right. My emotions aren't, they may feel physical, but I feel them. And my mental thoughts, they are energy. And my spiritual states of being that I experience of joy and love, this is also energy. And so that was, I think, one of my last minute add-ons was a chapter fairly early in the book that talked about the energy blueprint of a empath or an empathic person.
I love that so much. I have just a sideline question for you that came out of that. Curious about if it's the same, if it's just energies that come off of other people, like let's say you go to a party and you walk by somebody and you sense the energy of them, or can it also be energies of the moon and energies of, just different things that are in our environment?
Yeah, exactly. I think keep an open mind, because you don't know what can have an energetic or magnetic pull to you, because that when you find a magnetic pull towards something, that's a relationship and that's a connection trying to form. So if you are out in nature, and tonight is the full moon, and you feel something stirring in you, or some inspiration or something that comes up, that's energy as well. And this is where it gets interesting and curious, like what does interest you? What do you notice within your environment that is trying to have a connection with you? And that expands your reality profoundly when you understand that the energetic world is in communication with you as well.
Wow, I really love that. I never thought of it that way, that it's actually trying to have a connection to you. That's very, very powerful. So the structure, your structure was to present sensitivities through 5 different fields. But the one statement that you presented in all of them was no one is born an empath. Can you speak to this thread? Let's throughout your book. I love that. No one's born an empath.
It's truly how I see it, because we are born sensitive. And to me, an empath being a noun, it's a person, place, or thing, there's a weight to it in the sense that it identifies an aspect of yourself, an ability. And I take a long time in the book, I think over several chapters, to try and describe how when you're empathic, which means you have the ability to receive information, this is a very passive role, right? And our senses are passive in nature. It's a one-way sensory channel coming into you to give you information from your environment. So if you smell something, you are passively smelling something, and because you might have past experience with it, you know, okay, that's I say a barbecue in the book, so we'll stick to the barbecue. And you know that it's a barbecue and not a forest fire, for example, because you have learned experience about these things, but you're still very passively just taking in this information. But when you go into an active role in investigating and say you want to go see what's on the barbecue, you want to see who is barbecuing, you want to give them instructions because you think you're a better griller. These are all active intention around the information that you've just received. And so for me, when you're an empathic person and you're receiving information from the environment, you know, you're empathic. But if you go into an active role of wanting to investigate or interact with that energy that you've picked up, you enter into the realm of an empath. And I feel that, you know, I distinguish this because I've read a lot of online forums of people who are sensitive and empathic, and there's a lot of shared experience of being completely overwhelmed with being empathic or calling themselves an empath. And so my hope is that through my book, I am giving people who feel overwhelmed by their empathic channels and claiming themselves to be an empath, you know, I'm giving them permission to kind of not have to feel everything and maybe re-identify. Maybe I'm not quite there to being an empath. I'm on a learning curve. I'm still getting comfortable with the fact that I do pick up extrasensory information. And I also think it's important to point out that though I've just gone through this whole thing of saying we're energy and we're physical and they're one and the same, there is a distinction to be made about the physical realm. And that is that this is where we create in. This is where we manifest. This is where we see where our intention, where our focus, it comes and it reveals itself within the physical world. So again, just like we talked about the moon having a magnetic presence, having a conversation, having a connection, the environment is always in communication with you, whether you realize it or not. And so if you declare yourself an empath, what are you saying to the environment? How is the environment going to respond to that? Because, you know, I am statements are very powerful. It's what's in your core. It's how you can hold your own center. And so I just, for myself, there's a little bit of a cautionary, you know, really, do you know yourself and be such? Because if you are saying to the environment, I am an empath, for me, the functionality and the purpose of an empath is to sense balance in the energetic realm. And that's why we can hear what's not being said. That's how we can feel tension. We can feel that a room's environment is kind of off. And so if you're saying to the room, I am an empath, the room will respond. And I think a lot of people who do get overwhelmed and they want to shut down, or they do shut down, it's because there's been this premature identification with being an empath. And I may be controversial in stating this, but this is how I've experienced the energetic realm. And when you say that you're showing up and you're saying, I'm an empath, you are in service. Because I also say, if you identify as an empath, then you are on a spiritual path, because your sensitivities become guidance. You know, your sensitive nature moves up into a different realm and it becomes guidance, and your own ability to tune into that and to understand what your sensitivities are teaching you or showing you or trying to expand you, that enters more into a spiritual growth, self-development. And that is what I hope, you know, is the promise of my book, that by the end of reading it, you will be so intrigued about your own nature and curious about your own greatness that you'll step forward.
That's beautiful. So the title of your book is The Space in Between, and I know your publisher really wanted you to change that, but you were pretty determined. In fact, you were clearly extremely determined to keep it. Can you tell us why?
Yes, well, I will say why the publisher wanted me to change it is because 5 years ago, they had a book called The Space Between, and it had to do with a mother and a daughter relationship. And there's something within publishing that a publishing house cannot duplicate the title that they already have in their catalog. So we made a small adjustment and we put the space in between, which had allowed it to be different enough for it to come out. And then the subtitle is An Empath's Field Guide. And the space in between for me represents a lot of things. And I hope the reader too will come to identify what does that space mean for them. But as an empath, a functioning empath, you learn to toggle between the energetic and the physical. And it's a contact point that you are kind of like in a keystone in a bridge. You are there at the center, and it's typically in your heart. It's a heart-centeredness of being able to, you're able to energetically receive information, and you're able to carry it into the physical. And that could be witnessing someone. You know, it's really difficult to process anybody else's stuff. So this is one of the things you learn as an empathic person, is that, you know, if you witness someone and what they're going through and you offer them, prayers or energy work, that's very supportive, and it impacts the physical world. The space in between is also when you're empathic, and this is what really helped me understand that this feature, this empathic intuitive feature, is not putting you in harm's way. You are not absorbing toxicity. You may think things that you feel are yours, and then you go down a path of kind of complicating your own self-awareness. But what I see energetically that happens when you receive an impression from the environment, your energy fields expand. And this is why empathic people are called sponge people, because our mascot is the sponge. We are spongy. We absorb subtleties. But if you were to just look at the mechanics of the energy system, there is a 1 to 2 feet of expansion in the field. And it's very much like today's modern suitcases, where you have this extender feature where you can unzip and, you know, you get a little bit more space in there. Well, we do this as empathic people. This space between our own energy fields and what we're receiving, it's like a holding room. It's a holding space for us to discern what did we just pick up. And it's that space in between your own personal and your environment, that's also the space in between. So to me, it's, you know, it's this contact point between the physical and the spiritual and the energetic, and it's a contact point between me and you and everything and nothing, and the poets here and the philosophers, we could all go to town with it.
Wonderful. I think, Teresa, are we at the question and answer part of our program tonight?
Well, before we get there, I would like to read from my book.
Perfect.
Because this is a book launch. And language is very important for an empath, because this is what we're doing when we're witnessing. We are almost like surrogates that are feeling unprocessed, displaced emotions and thoughts in the environment. And so our ability to name something and to feel it and let it go and to be witnessed, naming is not labeling. And I think naming something doesn't mean that you are holding it in place, but you're in that moment, you have an understanding of what this means for somebody. And language is just a huge thing in my life. I have 2 children that had language disorders, and one had to use sign language when they were younger. My oldest didn't speak until he was nearly 5. So I understand how important language is to even just thrive in the physical world. And so if I could, this is from chapter 6. Language is one of the most important tools an empathic person has to navigate in the space between the physical and the non-physical planes. And even though I refer to them as separate planes, they truly aren't separate, because everything is energy. Language carries energy between the planes. It does the work of expressing ourselves outwardly, and it does the internal work of building self-awareness and identity. Language is both profound and subtle. We employ words to communicate with our world inside and out. When accepting the 1993 Nobel Prize in Literature, the late author Toni Morrison said, "We die. That may be the meaning of life, but we do language, and that may be the measure of our lives." Indeed, we do language. Have you ever stopped to think how much words serve you? You ultimately have control over the words you use, the meaning, pitch, tone, delivery, and form. This is you as a creator, whether you're conscious of what you're creating or not. You create and craft your world and relationships through language, just as your body is in constant dialogue with its biochemistry to maintain homeostasis or balance, just as your mind and your psyche are constantly receiving information from society and culture, and just as your senses perceive and experience your environment. Every life form around you is involved with the activity of communication. It's the humming and buzzing of life. So I would like to add that in, because I think when we can hear ourselves and hear the words we use to describe ourselves, to describe our environment, we get connected to the creator in us. And if you see something you don't like, then this gives you the opportunity to change the narrative.
So right now I have 2 questions that came through the chat. The first one is from Meg Nocero, and she says, yes, an empath path is a spiritual path. Love that. Were you drawn as an empath to publish with SWP?
I am. Okay, She Writes Press is SWP. That's the publisher I'm under. And I have to say, because I was a hybrid genre, traditional publishing wasn't that available to me. I even working with the editor in my rewrite, who was a Hay House editor, and she was very much about a certain format. I had to say, I'm not a traditionally published book. I want to be both a teaching memoir and self-help. And so she had to back off a little bit with the way she really wanted me to fit a formula. I was very grateful when She Writes Press offered me a contract. And they offered it to me based off of my intro and my first chapter, which were the most developed parts of my book. But I don't know how much they had read beyond that. And that's why I had this intuitive knowingness. It needed a deeper look. And, I wanted to know that when this goes out, it was its best form possible. So intuitively, I sat with it, because you're so grateful when you get that acceptance. You're like, oh, yay. But I just didn't say, take the first thing. I really sat with it. And I even talked with Chris about this during the time of my contract as well. And I'm very grateful to be here. And I think they did the design of the cover, and it's stunning. I think it's perfect. And in the interior work done and the design, everything has been top notch. So thank you for that, Meg.
And another question is from Anita, and it says, Signe, what was the driver that made you want to write this book?
This is one of those things that I've always been a writer. I've been a journaler. I journal a lot. I write. I love flash fiction. I love to create a scene that you enter and it ends immediately almost, so the reader is left going, well, and the imagination kicks in. So I've always wanted to be a writer, and I felt though that before I could get to the fiction and that sort of creativity, I had to write this book. It was an act of service for me. And I had a very interesting experience almost, I want to say 20 years ago, where I had in meditation, I had this exchange where I was holding a book and I read the last page of the book. I was on the very last page and I turned it, and I had such a deep feeling of contentness, and like I had just read something that was so fulfilling to me. And I kind of, in my meditative state, I was like, well, where is this book? Where can I find this book? Because it seems to have a lot of answers for me. And I turned the book over, and it was a book with my name on it as the author. And it really freaked me out because, you're like, I had 20 years of growth to go through to be able to put my name on this book. But 20 years ago, when I saw that, there was a glimpse of, is this a vision? Is this fate? And, and I ran away from it a bit. And there were many years I ran away from it because I didn't know if I could do it. And as I've said to some people, I grew into this book. This book was like, it was a container. And when I started out, I was very small, and I spent the years exploring every corner and every space of that container, learning the language, learning who I was. And so by the time that I could put my name on this book, I have almost the same feeling at the end, at the last page, that I did when I had that vision. So,
Okay,
so at the end of the book, and if you get to the end of the book and you feel what the sensations I hope one feels at the end, I hope you feel complete and yourself witnessed.
So another question from Meg Nocero is, I'm also very interested to know how you deal as an empath with all the conflicting energies out there, processing at a time when people are really moving to higher levels and not wanting change.
Well, I have a lot of compassion, because one of the things I discovered is that what you're typically picking up is unprocessed, meaning the people who have projected thoughts out into the environment, they're not aware of it. We have mindless thoughts all the time. If we were more self-aware and mindful, there'd be less toxicity in the mental and the emotional planes of the mass consciousness. So when I discovered that, what I'm picking up isn't intended for me, really. I'm like eavesdropping. and I am allowed to see or feel that somebody's in pain or somebody's upset. And so I don't take offense to it. I don't take it personally. I take it as opportunity to witness somebody else who's, in life is struggling. And maybe what I'm feeling is similar to what I'm experiencing. So I have to be honest with myself. Is it, am I picking this up because this is very similar to some of the stuff going on in my life, and it's acting as a mirror to make me more aware. So again, as an empath, the spiritual path is always there, and letting it be a guidance of where you can evolve or expand or center. The invitation is always there.
And then from Deborah Evans, what are some of the most gratifying or satisfying aspects of having your book published now and getting it in the hands of readers?
It is, I have to be honest, the first review I had my publicist sent to me, it was from a blogger called spiritualsocial.com. And her review was perfect for me. It made me feel seen. It made me feel witnessed. It made me feel like it was worth it. And I've had a few people who gave me blurbs, and one is Lee Medeiros. She's a writer and lives in Rhode Island. And she came out and she said, "You gave words to the wordless." And she said the whole way through, she read that book, she felt like she was nodding the whole time, and she was saying exactly, "Oh, that's what I mean," So it was this feedback that I hadn't had for all those 10 years, apart from editors, of having a reader tell me, you understand me, or, it was so beautiful for me. Yeah.
And then one from Haya Khan, can you talk more about being an empath and being a spiritual path? This totally resonates with me, but I'm curious to hear more about this.
Well, I think as an empath, because your sensory system is having a conversation with the energetic realm, it is automatically, if you lean into that and if you really embrace that and want to understand that more, that helps you become unified as a unified self, a consciousness, and it allows you to be expansive. And I can only speak for myself, but for all these sensitive, empathic people in this audience, I would like to ask you, if you were not hardwired to feel other people's pain, would you care? Because I had to be honest with myself about how my tendency, when I didn't understand my empathic nature, was to be a bit cynical, to be sarcastic. I used my mental body, my mental cognition to buffer me from having to feel. And yes, I could have empathy, marginal empathy. It was my sensitivities that really exposed me to the energetic realm. It exposed me to so much that I don't think I would have gotten otherwise. And I want to just add this one thing. I think when you're a spiritually inclined person, and that doesn't mean that you have to be empathic, but you're spiritually inclined, you're always looking at life through many levels and many layers and many consciousnesses. And that's why I think poets and philosophers and, and musicians and artistics and the creatives, they have this expansive way of taking something and interpreting it. And then the rest of us get to go along and ask ourselves, oh, what does that make me feel? And I think what is important here, and I'm sorry, I've just lost my train of thought. The creative, there is a creativeness to being an empath, but a spiritual path, you want to understand yourself, not just as an individual, but as an intricate part of oneness. And there's a lot of paradoxes and mystery, and you have to be curious. But there was a brilliant YouTube video I saw that was put out by Science and Spirituality. It's called Sand. And it was a doctor, Neil Theis, and he's a doctor in New York City, but he's also he's Buddhist. He does a lot of spirituality. He does a kind of a cross mix of shamanic and Buddhism, and he's a part Jewish. So he has this kind of expansive way of looking at things, and he's also brilliant. And he talks a lot about complex theory and how actually randomness in a complex system helps evolution. And he used the example of ants. And so ants are a complex system, but they self-organize. Like each ant has its part to do the role. And so usually in an ant colony, there's the workers that have the food and they've got the line and they're taking it back to the colony. And say if somebody puts their foot down right in the middle of that line, most of those ants, a great percentage of those ants will not know what to do when it hits that barrier. But there is a small percentage within an ant colony that their whole role is they will track a new path to reestablish the food line. And this is considered randomness. This random selected bit of ants that has this role to reestablish the line is honestly how I think of empaths. Because, HSP or highly sensitive people, they're claimed to be between 15 and 20% of the population. Not all HSPs are empathic, but I would say for the people who are empathic, they are right now part of world consciousness expanding, people becoming heart-centered, and the ones that can stay grounded and knowing of themselves, not getting wobbled or too caught up into drama, they are the ones that are going to help reestablish the line. And that line is to our heart. And I hope I didn't go too off there, but this is the aspect of me that when I look at something and I'm like, oh, that's like that, or that's like that. I like connections, and the space in between is when you can take two different disciplines and bring them together and say, this is the same.
One final question from Roger R. Will we one day in a Boulder retreat hear you read from your next book?
I hope so. Thank you, Roger. I really do hope so, because I think, once a bit of this publicity of this book, I want to really honor it. And then I'm going to kind of shift hats a bit. And I have a novel I've been working on that I'd like to get back to. I would also like to say, Chris when we talked, Teresa and Chris and I talked yesterday about the structure of today. And she said, what is your call to action? And I was like, I don't know, what is my call to action? And she helped me understand that, call to action is, what do I want everyone here to take away from this gathering? And today, as I was, kind of thinking about tonight, I realized because of language, the word launch is a very visual word. We think of launch of a rocket, we're launching, it involves energy. It involves pushing something out, and that you then hope the physics of it all takes it to its right path and its orbit or whatnot, or a boat launches and there's a new journey. And I really, for this book launch, my call to action is that if this material has spoken to you, or it has made you reflect on somebody in your life that you feel is sensitive and that they could benefit, whether you buy my book or not, or you promote it, I hope this launches you into wanting to explore your own sensory nature, because it's your truest nature. And that would be my call to action, is to be excited and curious and kind to yourself and to others.
And I would like to add that if you do feel inclined, please do go to Amazon and order Signe's book.
Thank you.
and do write a review, because these are the things that really help the world receive a book, and it helps the algorithm in Amazon. So thank you for considering doing that for Signe tonight.
Yes, and I know we're right at our time, but what I had asked Chris and Teresa how I'd like to end this evening is I would like to do a little meditation of the space in between, and it's just it's not very long. It's just an experience of coming back to your heart and coming inward, because I think, you know, one of the paradoxes, we expand by going inward. And so if we just take a moment, and I would say, what I would like you to do is to take your, put your palms together and rub. And then I want you to place whichever hand you want on the side of your neck. And then place the other hand on your heart. I want you to close your eyes. And I want you to feel your heart in your chest. And we have our hand on the side of our neck because our vagus nerve goes down through our neck, and we're touching into it. It travels all the way down into our gut. And we're breathing in and out. And we're letting our hand on our neck and our hand on our heart talk to each other. We are safe. It is safe to be in a body. It is safe to feel. It is safe to be vulnerable. It is safe to love yourself. It is safe to love the earth and receive from the earth. Now I want you to take your hand off your neck and bring it both to your heart. So both hands are on your heart. And that earth that you receive from is coming up from below, up to your heart. Your heart chakra is green, and the earth core star is green. You're letting the two meet to know each other, to know the connection, that magnetism. And then you're going to imagine whatever greatness, whatever wordless, benevolent, cosmic energy that holds us all. You let it come into your heart as well. This oneness, this connection, this space in your heart that holds both the earth, the cosmos, and yourself equally. No subservience. Each is equal. Each is in partnership. And this is one. I thank you all for being here. I hope that you feel a deeper sense of yourself and how you are connected to so much more than you possibly understand. And it's all beautiful. All right. All right, we did it, 7:02.
Yay.
I like to keep to a schedule. So, yeah. All right. Well, Teresa, do you want to conclude with anything, or Chris?
Just want to say thank you all for joining us this evening. It was wonderful to have all the beautiful energies around the world present, and congratulations, Signe.
Yeah,
You
just
just launched.
congratulations. Yeah, congratulations, Signe. And thank you to everyone for showing up tonight, and hope that you learned as much as I did from Signe and you read this beautiful book.
Yeah, and if there's, I know we've had you all muted, but there are some amazing people here, and I haven't seen them in many years. So if you do want to unmute yourself and say hello, it would be lovely for me to hear your voice.